Reddit story time. Have you ever encountered something paranormal? A few years ago one night at around 3 a.m. my wife and I were sleeping and I feel myself slowly waking up from a really deep sleep. My eyes started lifting up and as soon as they focused on the lamp on my dresser it slid off and shattered on the floor. My wife and I quickly sat up and looked at each other horrified at the startling noise. We agreed we would clean it in the morning and went back to sleep. The next morning when we woke up the lamp was at the foot of the bed, about 5 feet from where it fell, completely intact and not broken at all. We are still trying to make sense of it. From 3 until 13 I lived in a nice home out near Yosemite National Park, nothing super spectacular about it, 4 bedrooms, a den, dining room, the norm. Just down a little dirt road and, if you've ever been around those parts you'll know, miles away from civilization. My whole childhood I was visited by this girl in white. She never spoke. I would just wake up at night and see or feel her there. I asked my dad and his response every time was the men in our family can see ghosts. My rationale of this, I'm a skeptic, I remain that to this day, but the story I'm telling made me question, was that we had some sort of mild schizophrenia running through our family. It didn't bother me, she didn't look like other people. There was something off about her. After my father died my mother decided to sell the house and went through a realtor. We never once had contact with the buyers, only knew them by name. The buyers had a son who went to the same school as our old neighbors, dear friends of the family, and the son apparently came to school without sleep repeatedly, complaining that there was a girl who watched him at night and that he needed to get out. Shivers up my spine every time I remember this. I am the eldest of 3 siblings and of course as we moved house to house I got the basement bedroom most times. I was fine with this being the eldest, this let me have privacy. The last home I lived in with my family before I moved out on my own I spent 5 years in the basement bedroom. Through those 5 years I experienced amazing night terrors and sleep paralysis on a very regular basis. There were a few incidents where I would wake up and the closet on the far side of the room would be open just a crack, and I'd stare at it knowing I had closed it, and it would creak open just a touch more, then after what would seem like hours slowly close and click shut, not a slam, not a regular door close, a very slow methodical one if that makes sense. On 2 specific nights I woke up, not suddenly like something jarred me, but just kind of rolled over and at the foot of my bed saw a girl standing there. She looked very young, black hair, dark dress, and she did not move, didn't make a sound, and I never could make out her face. Both times I reverted immediately back to being 5 years old and hid my face under the sheets while my heart rate went full marathon pace. Eventually I would feel like it wasn't there anymore and I'd peek out and it would be gone. My parents are not believers in anything paranormal and I never told them anything thinking they would think I'm crazy. I chalked it up to night terrors and extraordinarily realistic dreams during paralysis. I moved out and far away. My next sibling in line got the coveted adult room in the basement and life went on. I had a few Christmas visits and other holiday runs and at one point I remember going into that room to get a chair and seeing the closet door nailed shut from the outside. I didn't question it as I thought there's no way it's related to my experience. Not long after that on another return visit home I went and checked the door to that closet. The nails were gone but in place was a padlock and there was clearly bundles of sage/sweetgrass hanging above the closet and above the only exterior window in. I worked up the nerve to ask my mom what's the deal with the basement and she reluctantly told me that my brother had seen things come in and out of the closet and that he had a girl appear beside his bed and terrorize him on several occasions. Now, no joke, I still haven't told them what I saw because I don't want them to have to move or be bothered with their basement over this. They are both retired, all kids have moved out, and they seem happy. They have also since gutted and renovated the whole basement. I've stayed there a few times now with my wife and nothing has happened. The only one I have is when I was in 4th grade. When I was little, I would always sleep with my door open. I went through a phase where I would wake up between 3 o'clock/4:00 am every night, and every single night I would hear footsteps walking up my stairs, around my living room, through my dining room, across my kitchen and down my hallway. They would always stop right before my doorway, then turn around and go back into the basement. But one night they didn't stop. What I saw was a shadow of a little girl/boy, couldn't tell, walk right in front of my doorway, look at me for a few seconds, then it walked away, back down the stairs. I slept with the door closed the next night. Woke up one night to a loud screeching noise, similar to the screech the Nazgul make in Elot. The entire room was flashing rapidly in bright colors, my computer turned on for a split second, enough to get the fans rattling, and my computer screen had static on it. The entire ordeal was over in less than a second. I still don't know if it really happened or if my brain was just playing me tricks. So I've never posted this because I always get to these threads way too late. So I get home from my job as a server at midnight. One of my roommates was in the Navy and was deployed at the time, and the other one was at his girlfriend's house. I cook myself dinner, and as I'm cooking my dog starts growling and barking towards the middle of the room at nothing. This is especially weird because she never, ever barks. She was a rescue and I bought her as a sense of security when I'm home alone. I'm a female, and I could never get her to bark at anyone. I dismiss her barking as odd, but I finish cooking and eat. I start to clean and turn the sink on because it takes forever to get hot, but right when I turned around the sink turned off on its own. Again, I think it's odd, but I don't really think it's worth freaking out over. The hair on the back of my dog is standing up straight, but no one is home and it's midnight, so I figure I'd just tough it out, even though I was beginning to get a little spooked. After cleaning, I go in the bathroom and sit on the sink to pluck my eyebrows. My bathroom was small, with the sink immediately to your right as you enter, with the toilet next to it, bathtub at the end, and toilet paper dispenser directly across the toilet. It was a really narrow room so you could reach the TP while sitting on the toilet. So the way I was sitting, the toilet paper dispenser was behind me. After 2 to 3 minutes I hear a weird noise behind me, so I turn around and I shit you not, the whole roll of toilet paper was unraveling fast as fuck, like someone was pulling it. I noped the fuck out of that bathroom. The door was closed and it had no windows, so it couldn't have been a breeze. I put a leash on my dog and ran out of that apartment faster than a Usain Bolt. By the time this happened it was already around 2 a.m. None of my friends were awake, so I spent the night sitting outside of the door to my apartment. When I went back in the next morning, the whole roll of toilet paper was on the ground, and the roll was probably 3/4 full. I'm talking about a good 5 to 10 meters of toilet paper. After that day I never had an odd experience quite like that one ever again, but one of my roommates did mention that a few times he'd come home and find every door and cabinet in the place open, when he'd specifically remembered closing them and leaving them that way when he left. This was when I was on vacation out of state and our other roommate was still deployed. I wrote this all on mobile, so excuse any spelling errors. I've posted this before, but what the hey? Okay, this may take a bit of doing, so bear with me. Army base, Zorst, West Germany, as was. A still, dark, autumn evening, must have been warm because it was the kind of temperature you don't notice. Me, 13, and a mate, 15, just dossing around before I had to go in. Behind the flats where we live was a green area with a play area. Only one street light, so it was very dark compared to our street and the well-lit main route through the camp, which was about 80 to 100 meters away from where walking. No traffic, nothing. It was never busy, and this was on a weekend evening, so literally, no traffic and no one out and about as far as we could tell. Which suited 2 teenagers just fine, thanks. Bear with me, this is important. So, we're heading between our respective blocks of flats and into the darkened park area. And we stopped dead. On the main road, moving right to left, was a figure. Vaguely person-shaped, but undulating and waving like cloth underwater. It glided along the middle of the road. Based on what it obscured behind it as it moved, I'd estimate it to be between 8 to 10 foot. but at the very least it was larger than average man size. This shape, this thing, was not walking, there was none of the slight up and down motion of walking. It just glided, smoothly, at a fast walking pace I'd guess. And it was black. Not someone wearing black clothes black. It was a hole cut into the night. No reflections, no shadows or shades. Just blackness. It seemed like a lifetime as I soaked this detail up. In reality it couldn't have been more than 2 or 3 seconds. I whispered, breathed, "Do you see that?" My friend, in a whisper, replied, "Yes." And the fucking thing changed direction. Towards us. The last image I have, before we broke and ran, was of it rising up as it came over the curb. This is what makes it real for me. This is something that had mass, that obeyed at least something of the physical world. It moved from the brightly lit road into the same darkness in which we stood. We broke and ran for our lives. Back onto our street and into my mate's block. The fucker then bolted back to his own home, leaving me wondering how the hell I was going to get to my block. After a while, the fear of the repercussions from my dad for being late overrode my fear of what might be out there, in the night. So I ran, eyes straight ahead, the 10 or so meters to my own front door. I was in too much trouble for being late to ever say anything when I got home. Sometimes, when I'm walking and the night is warm and still and quiet, I think about it and I wonder what I'd do if I ever saw it again. Run away? Or face it down and maybe solve a 30-year-old mystery? Honestly, I just don't know.